welcome to the webinar on algorithmic trading in different geographies. So today we will try to look at how algorithmic trading has evolved in different countries. So basically, just give me a minute. Let me open, get that thing visible. Just give me a half a minute. Yeah. Okay. So. So most of you who are attending today might be trading in different markets. So you would want to know what are the opportunities that exist in different geographies. So you might be having a profitable strategy which does well in a particular exchange. Now you would want to do the same thing in another geography. Why should you not do that? So, but before you do that, you need to know a few answers. Whether you will be able to do that or not. So let us first look at the most relevant factors which can help us in, I hope you all are able to hear clearly. Okay, so before we go ahead and then try to analyze whether it is profitable, whether we can expand our operations and so on, let us try to figure out what are the factors that we need to look at to analyze which geographies to export. So basically, for a trading manager, the most important question is, how do we decide which geographies to trade? Anyone has any clues? So basically, say you are a trading manager, you have a trading strategy which is profitable. Now you need to find out which exchanges to trade. How do you go about doing it? Okay, the first thing is, you need to know whether you are allowed to trade in that country or not. So what are the regulations in the country? Are foreigners allowed to trade? Are there restrictions on position sizing, short selling, restrictions with respect to algorithmic trading? So for example, in certain geographies, you need to get your strategies and panels. You need to show them to the regulators, get them approved, and only after that you can trade algorithmically. So what are the regulations in that country? There is a lot of hue and cry with respect to regulations. So there are a lot of for example, in US you have the Reg NMS, and then in Europe you have MiFID level 2, and then a lot of changes are happening, and this could have a very dramatic impact on your decision to start trading globally. Okay. So the first question that you need to answer is whether you are allowed. The second thing is, okay, if you are allowed, the market should be interesting enough too. They should have volume. You might be allowed to trade, but then if the markets don't have volume, or probably the entire breadth of instruments do not exist. So you design strategies which work good on commodity segments or say on the option segment, but then the markets might not have those segments. So you need to analyze what is the diversity of instruments, what is the volume in these instruments, do they have a lot of strongly related pairs for which you could run your strategies and things of that sort. So what is the diversity of instruments? What are the different segments which are listed? Do they have commodities? Do they have currencies? Do they have options? And how easy or difficult is it to hedge your currency exposure as well? So that is yet another factor actually. The next thing is, okay, you are allowed to trade as per the regulations. The markets have volume, so if you participate, you can participate in a lot of things, but will you be able to participate properly? If a lot of big players are already there, if a lot of competition is already there, then it will be very difficult for you to trade profitably. So to be able to trade profitably, you would need to be able to compete with them. So we need to know what is the level of competition, what is the level of sophistication of the competition, and so on. The next thing is, even if all these things are positive for you, so all these things are in your favor, but yet if technologically connecting to that market is not that simple, then that might throw water into your plans. So it's not just necessary that the markets are conducive, that there isn't much competition, and then the regulations are in your favor, do not restrict you. But technologically, it should be possible to connect to that exchange. So we will actually delve into this in detail, where we will say that, okay, what are the technological protocols that are relevant? Which aspects of technology should we look into when we compare different geographies for when we study an exchange for connectivity? Okay. So if I summarize it, this is how it will look like. The four most relevant factors: number one, regulations; number two, market size; number three, competition; number four, technology. Okay. And if you have answered those questions, wow, well and good. You have the answer to your question: how do you expand? Which geographies do you move to? So let us look at the landscape currently. So before I look at the landscape, what I will do is I will look at the volumes at each of those exchanges. So I have extracted the equity volumes. This is the average monthly volumes in USD dollar million. So this is the average monthly volume in each of these exchanges. So these are exchanges in Europe. So BM and F Bovespa is the exchange in Brazil. So it's the merger of two exchanges in Brazil. So they are the commodity exchange and equity exchange, both of them merged. And then this is Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Mexico. This is NASDAQ OMX. It's the technology exchange in US. NYSE is the New York Stock Exchange. Santiago is the exchange in Chile. TMX is the exchange in Canada. And likewise in Asia Pacific, you have Australia. BSE is the Bombay Stock Exchange, as most of you today would know. Bursa Malaysia, Colombo. Colombo only has equities, and that too very little. Gretai is the exchange in Taiwan. This is Vietnam, Hong Kong, Indonesia. There are two equity exchanges in Japan. Korean exchange. I'll come to the Korean exchange. I'll discover a little later. We have a geography-wise summary wherein I will discuss the Korean exchange in detail, because it's a very unique and interesting case. National Stock Exchange of India. Most of you trade here. Most of the participants, I believe, are from India, and you trade here, so you will know this. Most of these are very self-explanatory, which is the last one. Then in Europe, this is actually Morocco, so this is actually Africa. So I should have put it there. Cyprus, Deutsche Börse, Germany. This is Slovenia, Malta, Moscow. NASDAQ OMX also runs another exchange in Europe. So basically all Nordic, which is full of Nordic listings. So it's a pan-European exchange. This is a pan-European exchange. This is a pan-European exchange. So both these exchanges have listings of stocks across countries. And this is Vienna, Austria. This is Norway. Okay. Likewise, you have Abu Dhabi, Syria, Turkey, Cyprus. Ireland wrongly came here. It should have been here, sorry. And Muscat has a very small market. In fact, the funny thing in Muscat is even the financial segment of a newspaper actually discusses the Indian Stock Exchange, Nifty and BSE and so on. Even in Mauritius, we have a huge Indian expat population, and they discuss the Indian markets in their financial segments. The funny thing is Saudi Arabia has a huge equity market. And not just that, very shortly we will see that Saudi Arabia has a very big volume in another segment. Israeli market is also very interesting. They are also huge in another segment. We will very shortly see that. Okay. So what we see here is, in terms of equity, globally, you have huge volumes in NYSE, you have huge volumes in NASDAQ, which is predominantly the technology stocks. But recently, after the failure of the Facebook IPO listing, it's not mandated that a technology stock should list in Nasdaq, but a lot of technology stocks are also listed in NYSE US. For example, Twitter is listed in NYSE and not on Nasdaq. And especially after the fiasco with Facebook listing, Nasdaq got a lot of bad publicity. Okay, so these are predominantly the high volume ones. Even and then in Europe you have the Deutsche Börse, the Eurex, which is high, and then NYSE Euronext. A lot of the volumes here are actually were taken away by private exchanges, new lobsters. So you have an exchange known as KAIEX. So I can use this, right? It's not usable today. Okay, no, leave it. I'll use a new pen. Okay, so you have new private exchanges called KAIEX, and then you have this. You even have BATS in Europe, and then you have what was this called? You have Turquoise, which failed. This was supported by LSE. It failed, and then you have what was this? The trading TQM. So you have a lot of other destinations. You have dark pools. So how many of you know what a dark pool is? Okay. So basically, what happens in an exchange? In a normal exchange, you can send an order, and then you say that this is the price I want to buy at 100. Someone else says that I want to buy at 199. Someone else says 98, and so on. And then again, you have the seller. Someone saying I want to sell at 101, and someone saying I want to sell at 102, and so on. Then when someone says that I want to sell at 100, then both of them get matched, and then a trade happens. Now in the exchange, you can see the list of all the buyers, list of all the sellers. Now, if you can see the list of all the buyers and all the sellers, then you know, then you can actually see that someone is constantly bidding to keep buying. So if someone has a strong pressing need to buy or sell, then that intention gets discovered in the exchange, because everyone can see the orders. Because everyone can see the orders, therefore, if someone is on a buying spree or someone is on a selling spree, then everyone gets to see that. Now there are some private parties, they decided that what if we don't disclose this order book? You just put an order to buy. You can't see what else is there in the market. So you don't know where the rest of the players are. So you, based on your valuation of what the fair price is, you send an order to the exchange. And then based on other people's estimation of what the fair value is, they would send an order. Now the moment my fair value to buy matches someone else's fair value to sell, then it will result in a trade. The good thing about this is people cannot see where the orders are. So therefore, if I have a huge amount of stocks to buy and sell, and if I do it in a dark pool, my trading activity will not be exposed to everyone. So that therefore ensures that adverse effect, the market acting against me is reduced. So in US and in Europe, you have a lot of dark pools, but then as we can see, the volumes are predominantly in US, NYSE, Nasdaq, and even the volumes in Canada are as high as the highest volumes in Europe. And then in Japan, in Asia, the highest volumes are in Japan, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. And then a lot of you might be reading news articles saying that NSE has the highest number of shares traded and things of that sort. The thing is, the value of the share that is traded in NSE is very less. So because of small stock sizes, therefore while the number of stocks traded is high, but then the value of